So in this video, I'm gonna go over 5 different ways that leaders and everyone struggles with decision making. And so what I want for you to take away, A, is the ability to recognize when am I in one of these 5 decision making challenges so that you know what to do in order to make the decision more effectively. All right, so let's dive into it. The first decision-making challenge, all of us are familiar with, right? Now, if you think about a time in your life where you've had a divided mind about a decision. So a recent client comes to mind, and he had an employee working for his company, and the employee was underperforming. And so on the one hand, he wanted to fire that employee, and on the other hand, this person was close to him, was a relative, and he wanted that employee to work there and succeed. So a divided mind is, the decision is torn between, should I fire this person, should I not fire this person? It could be, should I, go to Chipotle and get the burrito, or should I eat a salad? It's where you're in conflict between 2 options. This is a result of having divided criteria and values present. Every decision that we make is to meet certain values and criteria. And in order to solve this decision-making challenge, we want to bring those values and criteria, instead of having them separate, we want to bring them together at the front end of your decision-making, and then holding those values constant, make your decision. So for example, if I go to the Chipotle example versus salad, what's important to me about Chipotle? The flavor, the satisfaction, right? Those are my criteria. What's important to me about the salad? Being healthy, sticking to my nutrition goals. And rather than being at odds with these 2 criteria, because they don't have to be in conflict, what would happen if I could bring them together at the front end of my decision? So the question now becomes, what can I get for lunch that is both satisfying and nutritious and delicious, right? If we go back to the employee example, how can I do right by my family member? How can I take care of this person, etc.? And how can I do what's right for my company? And if we bring those 2 back to the front end of the decision, we're going to start to open up more possibilities. The issue is not that making these decisions is challenging. It's that unconsciously, rather than making the decision, when we have what appear to be conflicting criteria, we just dance back and forth between the 2, and we put off making the decision. And the longer you put it off, the more you lose in terms of opportunity cost, in terms of profit, in terms of time, right? So when we're divided, what do we want to do? Bring those criteria to the front of the decision-making process. Okay. Decision-making challenge number 2. Maybe you've experienced this yourself. You have a particular issue that you need to solve, but you don't have enough options to be able to solve that problem. So I'm working with a client who has a construction business, and in his construction business, he's continuing to lose $6 million a year because the same errors are getting repeated on an ongoing basis. And he has not made a decision about how to solve this problem, because in his mind at the time, there was no way, there were no options. There's nothing I've tried everything, right? And if you think about it, you can recognize for yourself times in your life where you felt like you didn't have options, right? Now, in coaching, what I was able to do with him is to turn on his creativity, to get him into a creative state of mind, right? Where he all of a sudden is starting to generate 2, 3, 4, 5 new options. And then it's as simple as a hire. He hires 1 person, and then he's saving himself $6 million a year. The issue again is not that it's hard to overcome these challenges. It's that when we are in a habitually stuck decision-making pattern, it costs us revenue over time. So for that business owner, for example, that was $6 million a year for several years. right? Because the unconscious, I don't have any options, just runs habitually in the background. Now, for those of us who are a little bit more advanced in our NLP study at the moment, what we can do then is we can train the brain to automatically run someone's creativity strategy and start generating new options. This is the benefit of working with an NLP coach, so that you train your nervous system as soon as you're having divided mind, or as soon as you're in one of those instances where it doesn't seem like there are options, your nervous system starts to do something different. That's really the benefit of NLP for leaders, is rather than watching a video and learning about this, you actually instantiate it, you habituate it, you make it a mental muscle to be an exquisite decision maker, right? With this or any of the other decision-making challenges. So the third decision-making challenge is when we have too many options. Richard Bandler, the co-creator of NLP, talked about the Chinese restaurant, right? Where you go into the Chinese restaurant and the menu is like, it's an entire book of options, and each page is like, right? And you see people and they're just in there and they're like, oh, yeah? So when you have too many options for what to decide, people get decision fatigue. They go into decision paralysis, yeah? And a lot of times, especially now, there are so many ways you can proceed in the world, right? The funny context, I have a friend of mine who she's currently, getting serious in her romantic life, and she has a quality problem. She has too many guys that are into her, right? It's a good problem to have. One guy's this, one guy's that, one guy's this, one guy's that. And how do you make a decision among many options? What we want to do is we actually want to start in your mind role-playing. What is it going to be like if I went with option A? If I have the lo mein, what's that going to be like? Imagine it, taste it, deliciousness, right? And then if I have the General Tso's chicken, right? Step into it, taste it, get the full experience in advance of each of the options to the best of your ability. This will tell you which of those decisions is going to be the best one for you. All right? By the way, that doesn't mean that you couldn't generate more options if you wanted to. Another one is feeling forced to make a decision. It's that thing of, well, I have to make a decision. Maybe you don't want to make a decision. Maybe you think, or some part of you thinks that if I decide to wait, more information will unveil itself. Right? Especially in changing, ambiguous, uncertain environments that are nonlinear. You don't always have all the data that you need. If we go back to my friend who's dating all these guys, it might be the case that she needs to not decide until she has gotten a chance to vet each of these particular candidates. She sees how they are with children, or if they're this or if they're that, right? But we feel as if, I'm remembering my cousin Vinny, right? Where Marissa Tomei is going, my biological clock is ticking. We feel a pressure to make a decision. And business owners, oftentimes, we put this pressure on ourselves to make the decision. And so what we want to do in NLP, in the coaching jargon, we call this a modal operator of necessity. Feeling like you need to, you have to. And oftentimes, those modals can create unnecessary stress, pressure, and tension that don't put you in the right state of mind to make the best decision. So again, what we want to do here is we want to shift from needing to make the decision, I have to do it, to a different modal, I get to. I can make a decision. And while that seems simple and subtle, oftentimes it's the simple and subtle things that produce the most elegant changes for us. When you go, I can make a decision, that doesn't mean you have to. I can make a decision, or I can decide to wait. I can decide to gather more information, right? You don't have to make a decision. And if you decide to wait, that in and of itself is a decision that gets you out of the indecision process. Lastly, and I think this is really for all of us, especially for business leaders, but really for everyone, we are entering into a world that is becoming increasingly nonlinear, increasingly ambiguous, increasingly uncertain. So, you can think of the many examples, artificial intelligence, the robots that are now coming up and down my street delivering groceries. We just survived the pandemic or the apocalypse, right? And there's another one coming with Russia and the United States. And what's going to happen with this? Disruption is the new norm. Disruption is the new norm. So for those of us who need a degree of certainty to feel good about a decision, this is going to be a challenge for you. This is going to be a real challenge, okay? So instead, we need a framework for making decisions in a constantly changing, ambiguous, uncertain world, which is the future. This is where we're now and where we will be. So the way that we do this is credit to John Oberdorf for this, his Beyond Goals model. And what you do is you think about, what is the end outcome I want? What is the vision that I want to have? And then you want to get an embodied sense of what it's going to feel like to have that vision. Why? Why do you want an embodied sense of that? Decision is an unconscious process. In other words, it's run unconsciously, and then you become consciously aware of your decision. There's a lot of neuroscience on this. From the moment you provide somebody with a stimulus to make a decision, their nervous system makes the decision before they're consciously aware. You can look this up. There's good science on this. So what that means is that your unconscious mind, the body mind, the nervous system is making that decision. Yeah? Cool. So we want an embodied sense of the outcome I want. So if the vision, for example, is I want this company to be massively profitable and to change the, be good for the community and all this stuff, and the employees are fulfilled at work, right? What's it gonna be like for you? How are you gonna be when that happens? And it's just like, and you feel that feeling as you're making your decision, and then you take the smallest next step. And you take the smallest next step. Does it bring me closer to this? If so, what's the next smallest step? And so on. Now, these are great tips. What will really help you become much more effective in your decision making is to get with an NLP coach who can take you to a time when you had the divided mind, right? When you felt like you were forced to decide, or where there was an uncertain, ambiguous future. And what they can do is they can literally, like a personal trainer, train the neural pathways in your mind and body so that each time you're in that context, you run an effective decision strategy. And the real power of this is an opportunity cost. My dad is an executive coach, and he often says the reason why leaders get coaching is not because they're not great at what they do. Most leaders are exquisite. They're doing so much right. And then he gave me a NASCAR analogy, which is baffling to me because we never watched NASCAR growing up. But he said, if you look at the fastest cars in the world, they're NASCAR. They're going around these tracks faster. It is the absolute peak of performance, absolute peak. But those cars go in for pit stops more than you and I take our cars to the shop. Because in order to perform at the absolute highest, you need to get the oil changed sooner, you need to get the tires, you need to do this. They even give the drivers juice, make sure their blood sugar is working. So as a leader, it's really about getting 1% better. And if you're 1% better daily on an ongoing basis in your decision making, like if we go back to the examples that I gave you earlier, what was the cost for this gentleman who had the construction company of not making a decision for 3 years? It was $18 million, and it was one decision, right? What's the cost of not doing something about that employee that's effective? What's the cost on morale? What's the cost on customer experience? What's the cost on your stress level every time you go into the office and have to deal with that person? Now, for the rest of us who aren't business owners, this is happening all the time. If we go back to my friend who is overwhelmed with dating options, instead of being overwhelmed with options, if she knows how to decide in that environment, she's gonna make a decision that brings her the best most fulfilling option, right? So I hope this was helpful. If you're interested in coaching or NLP training, you're gonna find a link below and you can click and find out. We'll chat and see if it's appropriate for you. Like, comment, share, do all the things, and I'll see you in the next video.